Hey, what's up you guys? It's me, Kubjob28, and... Okay, so today we're going to talk about something a little different. I was scrolling online late the other night. You know how it is just falling down these rabbit holes? And I stumbled onto something that... Honestly, it really shook me. We all think of horses as these majestic, beautiful animals, right? Like from fairy tales and movies. But what if I told you there's a side to the equestrian world that's been deliberately hidden? Okay, so the first one we're diving into is called the Order of the Black Stallion. And just the name alone gives me chills. This group was active in the late 1800s, mostly in remote, rural parts of the American Midwest. On the surface, they presented themselves as an exclusive equestrian club for the wealthy elite. But behind closed doors, things were so much darker. Insiders who escaped described intense, moonlit rituals deep in the woods. They believed a specific bloodline of black stallions held the reincarnated spirits of ancient warlords. Owning and riding these horses wasn't a hobby. It was a way to channel that supposed ancient power. His favorite black stallion was later found running wild miles from the estate with blood on its hooves that was never identified. The order eventually dissolved after its leader mysteriously vanished. Next up is the Hoofed Brotherhood, and this one feels like something out of a folk horror movie. They weren't about power, they were obsessed with horse spirits. Every horse had a corresponding spirit guide. Through intense, grueling rituals, a human could bond with that spirit. Live as a horse for a week, eat only oats, eat only hay, drink only trough water, forbidden from speaking, sleep in a stable, sleep directly next to the horse they wished to bond with. So a lot of you might have heard of Epona. She was the ancient Celtic and Roman goddess of horses, fertility, and protection. She was generally seen as a really positive, benevolent figure. But the cult of Epona's shadow, which emerged in rural France in the 1950s, took this ancient worship and twisted it into something really sinister. They believed the modern world had insulted Epona, cars, technology. They felt she had turned her back on humanity and now existed as a vengeful, shadowy version of her former self, Epona's shadow. And they believed the only way to appease her was through acts of devotion that mirrored her supposed new, darker nature. This group centered around a charismatic leader, a woman who called herself Epona's oracle. Members were told to release their horses from their stables to run free for the goddess, which caused chaos and accidents on local roads. Members were forbidden from calling vets for their sick or injured animals. The result was a lot of animal suffering and preventable deaths. The group was eventually broken up by animal welfare authorities after a neighbor reported hearing a horse in distress for days. They found several animals in a state of horrific neglect. It's just so sad how a belief system built around a goddess meant to protect horses was twisted to cause them so much pain. So, this next one is called the Iron Reign Society. They operated less like a spiritual cult and more like, well, a secret equestrian mafia. They were active in the affluent horse community of Virginia and Kentucky during the 1970s and 80s, and their focus was really all about control. These folks were obsessed with bloodlines, not for any spiritual reasons, but purely for power and profit. The way they exerted this dark influence over local stables was pretty intense. They used intimidation and sabotage. If a stable owner refused to sell them a prized stallion or mare, suddenly their own horses would mysteriously fall ill. Okay, this story is pure nightmare fuel. Let's talk about the Midnight Riders. Coastal marshlands of South Carolina for generations. Stories trace back to the post-Civil War era, rooted in local folklore and Gullah Geechee traditions, but twisted into something terrifying. A secret society. Gatherings held in the dead of night, deep within cypress swamps, riding in complete darkness. Horrifying hand-carved wooden horse masks. Close-up. Masks showing snarling demonic horse faces. The core belief. The legend of the cursed steed. Spirits of horses that died tragically would linger in the swamps. In battle, in accidents, through abuse, these spirits were vengeful and dangerous. The riders believed they could bargain with them. Masked nocturnal rituals to redirect the spirit's anger. Moonless nights. Riders galloping through the mist. Horses' eyes glowing red. The riders faded as the modern world encroached. But locals still warned, don't go into the swamps after dark. You might just hear the hoofbeats of the riders. This is where it gets into some serious body horror territory. I'm just warning you. The Maresvale sect was a small, extremely isolated group that surfaced in the Pacific Northwest in the 1990s. They were a doomsday cult, but with a very specific and very strange twist. They believed that humanity was irredeemably corrupt. However, They also believed that horses were pure divine beings, and that the only way to survive the apocalypse was to shed one's flawed human form and become, in spirit and eventually in flesh, a horse. This involved things like wearing bits in their mouths for hours on end, attempting to walk and run on all fours until their bodies were bruised and broken. Okay guys, this is the last one, and this is the one I warned you about, the Crimson Carriage Circle. This cult was active in a wealthy, picturesque New England town in the early 2000s. They were obsessed with a very niche and dark part of Victorian-era spiritualism. They believed that horse-drawn carriages, especially antique ones, could act as conduits to the spirit world. They thought the energy of all the people who had ever ridden in them, the births, the deaths, the secret conversations, was absorbed into the wood and leather. Their rituals revolved around these elaborate antique carriages. During their secret meetings, they would sit inside a specific carriage, a stunning but eerie 19th century black brougham, and conduct seances. For their most ambitious ritual, on the anniversary of the woman's death, the group decided they needed to recreate the accident. The carriage crashed just as the original had. 2 members were killed instantly, and the other 3 were critically injured. It's the ultimate horrifying example of devotion turning into a death wish.